kinky, out of control, steel wool. Black women have long heard such language, and worse, about their hair. Writer and blogger Michele Tapp Roseman decided to chronicle her journey of learning to accept her natural hair and to help others embrace theirs in her new book, Hairlooms, The Untangled Truth About Loving Your Natural Hair and Beauty. And it brings Michele Tapp Roseman to our studio tonight. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here.
Sure, thanks for having me.
You tell a story about a girl named Shelly. Would you be able to share that story with us?
Sure. Shelly was your bubbly 4 or 5-year-old little girl. And however, she was always teased about her complexion, nice chocolate brown skin, and hyperpigmented gums. You know, they were dark. And I remember in one particular instance in the book, I talk about how Shelly was actually stoned by some family members.
They circled her.
They circled her. She was teased and taunted.
And she was young.
She was very young, called the N-word, and also just taunted for her naturally kinky hair. And Shelly actually is me. That was me when I was 4 or 5 years old. And even though I'm over 50 now, I find that that story still sticks with me. And one of the things that I discuss in Hairlooms is the power of piercing words and how we have to be so careful with words that we say about our hair and beauty, not just what we say, but what we allow others to say about us as well. Because even though that was a singular event, I find that it traveled with me throughout the years.
How did that incident affect you?
Oh my goodness, from that moment, it was interesting. Even though I didn't have a huge vocabulary, something instinctively told me that those words were not kind, that was not the kindest way to speak about me, and I felt like I was physically marred. And it just manifested in some of the relationships I allowed myself to get into, and particularly how I felt about my hair and my beauty. I felt like I didn't have it unless my hair was straight and long.
And up until that point, it's not something that you thought about.
Oh, of course not. I mean, I didn't think about, let me say, I didn't think about it consciously, but I remember even in my selection of dolls and images on television that I would gravitate toward, they often did not look like me. Now, part of it was because it was in the 60s and 70s, so some of it had to do with the era in which I came up. But I think also, just in society, there was a general message that girls that look like me were really not pretty. So you couple that with an event that takes place with people who are close to you and supposed to nurture you.
And it's affirmed.
Yeah, it's affirmed.
Why did you call the book Hairlooms?
Hairlooms, it's a play on the word heirlooms, and we know what heirlooms are. Those are those code words, family traditions that are passed along that keep the family lines fresh and vibrant. And so what I wanted to do was have readers understand that there are words about natural hair and beauty that we can pass along and allow to punctuate our family lines as well, so that we can start some new traditions, as opposed to saying the hair is nappy or bad or kinky. Those things are passed along oftentimes unwittingly, but to be conscious about making sure that we say things that are going to add vibrancy to who we are in the years to come.
Here's what you write in the book.
Yes.
While we likely don't admit it, hair has become the shelf upon which we both wittingly and unwittingly rest the volumes of our lives. From our childhood to adulthood, we subconsciously collect these experiences, comments, and actions and put them into heavy volumes that we tote around for the rest of our lives. These are the emotional weights. They're too heavy for us to bear, so we shift onto our hair. Why do we do that with hair specifically?
I would say because hair is something that folks tend to gravitate toward. When
you kept saying in the book, it's your crowning glory.
It's a crowning glory, but even if we just sort of drill it down a little bit and think about some of the, I know the characters I grew up with, Goldilocks, you know, or Little Orphan Annie, known for that mop of red hair. And for women, I think that has been one of the distinctions, oftentimes not who we are, but what adorns us. And so for African American women, I know myself in particular, I found because I did not feel pretty, I always had long hair that had been straightened. And I would get so many compliments on that, and something told me, wait a second, so this actually is, you know, where the beauty lies.
So you kept doing it.
Oh, of course. And so back to the point of the book, hair is never meant to be who we are, the end all and the be all. It is an adornment, but it's not the essence of who we are.
Hair issues just aren't owned by Black women.
Oh, no.
But you're focused on Black women's hair in this book. Why?
Because I find that for us, it's more of an issue. In society, you can just see from the 60s on and even dating back prior to then, our hair tends to really not be accepted. I'm thinking about a study that has recently been released from the Perception Institute in the States, and it just talks about how people, by and large, across racial and ethnic lines, don't see African American Afro-textured hair as being that which is pretty or beautiful. And I'll just give you a short story that was referenced in the book very quickly. A couple of months ago, I went to an alpaca farm. I'm a crocheter, and so I like to see natural fibers. And there were a couple of alpacas. One was a nice chocolatey brown, and the other one was sort of a creamy white. And the person who was just telling us a little bit about the farm and the alpacas mentioned, oh, this brown creamy one, no one really likes the hair because it's just like a black woman's hair.
Did he not see you?
She saw me. She saw me, and it's almost like, you know, the paper cut, it cuts you, but you almost don't realize that it happened. And I was like, what in the world just happened? And so this is just a couple of months ago, close to Washington, D.C. area. And so there you have it. That just brings to bear what the study says, and what, you know, many of us know, that oftentimes society just does not look at our hair as being beautiful. So it's a particular issue to us. And to your point, I think women across ethnic lines, we struggle with wanting what we don't have. You know, if it's straight, I want it to be kinky. If it's kinky, I want it to be straight, or any other permutations.
You're right. Our unconscious need for public and private acceptance silently pushes us to the pristine walls of academia, where we often graduate with high grades and low esteem. How much of a Black woman's self-esteem is tied up in her hair?
I think a lot of it really is. Again, because it's not just who we are, but how a lot of people see us. And even I think about during the times of the interview, and even myself, it's tied into our romantic relationships too. I don't know how many women I've spoken to and even thought for myself, when I go natural. At the time I was married, but I wondered, you know, is Kyle gonna say that, you know, I look okay?
That's your husband?
Yeah, that's my husband, Kyle, that it looks okay. And he's one, you know, man that just says you look beautiful either way. But I've heard countless stories of women who say that the man that they're in a relationship with clearly is like, do not wear your hair natural because there's a problem, there's an issue with it.
And you also get that with jobs, right?
Oh my goodness, yeah. I think in some instances you really have to take a look at the lay of the land, as it were. And in some cases you may find that employers are warming up to it a bit more, but then there's some instances where clearly there is a code of conduct, and as it relates to hair and what is acceptable and what is not. And it's problematic because when you really think about it, rhetorically speaking, why is there something wrong with what naturally grows out of my
because recently in the States, there was a law that was passed that it's okay for employers to not hire people based on if they have dreadlocks.
Yeah, again,
2017.
2017, when you...
And this happened in 2016.
Yeah, so when you think about that, again, to my point, rhetorically, what is wrong with it? And what does that say? Again, it says that there's just a broad understanding, or a thought rather, that there is something wrong with, you know, with what we have.
We have a clip from Chris Rock's documentary, Good Hair.
Yes.
Let's take a look.
Sure.
So, what's your definition of good hair?
Something that looks relaxed and nice. Yeah, relaxed and straight.
Wow, what do you have there? Is that a bucket of relaxer?
No doubt, baby.
Relaxer, also known by its government name, sodium hydroxide. Relaxer's the chemical that will take a Black woman's hair from this and change it into this. Wow. Look at it. Look at my ring still there. My fingers all there. I think I'm gonna marry you.
I mean, Chris Rock is Chris Rock, right?
He is.
You laugh, but it's also kind of uncomfortable.
Sure. When you stop and you think about it, it's like, oh, what are you saying? Yeah. Interestingly, I'll marry you, just to dovetail on what we talked about before, and the attraction. Yeah.
Right. I didn't even catch that.
Yeah.
So Chris Rock asks one of the women her definition of good hair.
Sure.
Where does that idea come from? This idea of good hair?
I think in a lot of instances it probably stems from slavery, where there was one type of hair that was preferred over another, and then that has just carried throughout. If you look at images in media, by and large, you will see that if they're women of color, oftentimes they have longer, straighter hair. Nothing wrong with that, not disparaging it. But if you continue to see that image, if I continue to see that image over and over again subliminally, it says that this is what is acceptable, this is what is worthy of being viewed by everyone else.
And what determined what was good hair?
I believe the texture, the length of it, the silkiness, its sheen, length, color, length.
And I think he also showed a picture of Naomi Campbell, who I think that was a wig she was wearing.
Oh, let me also say, that was a wig, but let me also say the ability to swing your head and have your hair move.
But I think we all did that. I know I used to do that, where I would put like a towel over my head.
Yes, for me, it was a clean cloth diaper. It was a diaper. I was in front of a Sears and Roebuck fan with the metal blades, and I would just stand there until it would just whip all around my head. So that's the good hair. If it can move, and not just stay in one place, then that's what is good. Why? Because that's what we've seen elevated in the media and other public places, and so that's what the look is.
And Chris Rock also mentioned a relaxer, and it's that cream that you put, and it makes your hair straight.
Yes.
Where does this come from, like you putting this chemical in your head to make it straight?
What I would say, and not knowing the complete origin, but just suffice it to say, by any means necessary. Whatever it takes to make it straight, even if it's a chemical. I remember when I permed my hair, I referred to myself as a serial permer, meaning I permed for years, at least 20 or so, and I would sustain burns. I hate to say it, in my scalp.
Because it stings.
It more than stings. It literally, it burns. And so I would have a scab and have to deal with that, but my hair was straight.
Well, what are the consequences of using chemicals like relaxers?
Well, I mean, number one, there's so much hair breakage. A lot of times with African American women in the community, you'll see a lot of the edges around the hair is very fragile, or either the hair follicle is just not healthy. You'll see a lot of the scabbing, breakage, hair loss, and also I would say too, just the seething self-loathing underneath, and just the sense of, I'm doing this every 4 to 6 weeks because I've got to fix myself. There's something wrong with me. So there are external, but I believe that there are internal issues or consequences as well. So it's not just topical. It's more than, it's something that's going on in the surface, and as we continue to do that, we perpetuate the message that I'm not good the way I am.
And it also affects your lifestyle, because if it rains,
oh, forget it. There is no
exercising.
swimming, there's no exercising or anything that's going to cause it to revert, as it were.
And this costs a lot of money. How much money do Black women spend
Well, it
on hair
depends. You can
products?
do over the counter, which is going to cost maybe about $10 or so, but it can go upwards in the hundreds of dollars. And I know people who actually get it done on a weekly basis. Yeah, so it can
you
cost
write
a
that
lot.
the average Black woman spends 3 times as much on beauty products compared with other American women.
Sure, and I think in some instances it speaks to chasing, as I relate to in the book, the beauty phantom. That look that I want at any cost, I know I don't have it, and I'm gonna have to really expend some dollars in order to make it happen. I mean, there's the normal upkeep. I'm all for that. Love looking good, and I think we should do that. But when it's exorbitant, it's really something on the inside, I believe, that's driving us to an edge that we're not even oftentimes aware of.
What led you to finally embrace your natural hair?
For me, I was trying to get pregnant a number of years ago, and I figured the best way for me to do that was to stop perming, because I wasn't quite sure, but I knew that chemicals in my bloodstream wasn't the best thing for a baby. And when it didn't work out for us, and I walked through infertility, which I talk about in the book as well, I still had natural hair. And I realized, as I was dealing with this issue that many women face, I was also dealing with the fact that I just did not feel pretty because I didn't have this perm. But I was still intrigued, and I liked my hair. And so that's when I really began to sort of grapple with what was on my head, but then also what was in my heart about how I really felt about myself. And had it not been for that singular incident, I don't even know if I would have gone natural, because I was just the type of woman, you'll see it in Hairlooms, where I was like, when I die, just straighten my edges.
As long as my hair is straight.
As long as my hair is straight, yeah.
Are more Black women embracing natural hair now?
I would say it's hard to say, because you may look at numbers and say, oh, well, people are not using as many perms, but it's one thing to embrace it on the outside. As I said, it's another thing to embrace it on the inside. And so I believe the fallacy is to say, just because you have natural hair, or you wear your hair in its natural state, rather, that you definitely embrace it. The two don't always coincide.
You write about gold medalist Gabby Douglas,
Yes.
the youth phenom,
Yes.
and the backlash she received for her hair during the 2012 London Olympics. What happened?
Oh, I mean, during that time, even though she had just such a pristine appearance and pristine performance, rather, folks were just focusing on her hair being, quote unquote, unkempt.
What was wrong with her hair?
There was nothing wrong with it in my estimation, but people just cited in the Twitter sphere and everywhere else that her hair was sticking up all over the place. And just think about it, if you flipped all over and you've done different types of gymnastics, your hair is not going to be in place either. But again, that became the focus, and it speaks to what we've been talking about all along. Even someone who is a stellar athlete, the hair and that image can upstage what she has done so well, and that ends up being the main focus.
And a lot of the criticism was from Black people.
Yes, I understand that.
Is there an irony in that?
I think there is, but to some degree, it really is, because oftentimes we have not dealt with the issues. So it's easy, even this story I tell about Shelley, it's easy to criticize what I haven't dealt with, and it's easy to point out the pain that I feel in someone else. So oftentimes we have not really dealt with it enough. So that's what ends up happening. You can attack someone else. It's easier than attacking myself.
And you also write about how that criticism affected Gabby.
It really wounded her spirit, and it appears that it wounded her soul as well. And it's really hard when you get it from people who are not like you, but then when you have to sustain those types of comments from someone who is like you,
Right.
it's even more hurtful because you wouldn't expect that.
We touched on it a little bit,
Yeah.
But how did slavery instill this idea of our Black hair being bad?
Oh.
Like the texture.
Sure. Well, I would say because during that time, there were not implements or tools to really do our hair, you know, where you have nice wide tooth combs and things of that nature. And so there were cards that were used for grooming animals, and that was actually used for slaves' hairs. And so that in and of itself, just that awkward correlation between the animal and the hair of a slave. And then again, what I find is that people tend to criticize what is not like what they are not familiar with. And so it definitely takes more work to do our hair. And so it ended up being deemed bad. And so anything that was close to that, I believe that just sort of carried on throughout the generations with the slave masters and looking at, you know, the slave's hair.
I want to show another clip. This
Sure.
time it's from Fox News.
Sure.
Bill O'Reilly discussing U.S. Congresswoman Maxine Waters' hair from this past spring.
You're not nearly as patriotic as we are.
So what does that mean, Bill? We've been listening all morning. We cannot.
I didn't hear a word she said. I was looking at the James Brown wig.
If we have a picture of James,
It's the same.
it's the same one, right?
No,
And he's not
okay,
using
I
it
gotta
anymore.
defend
They just,
her on
you
that.
guys
You're
buried him.
you're all wrong
I
about
have to
this.
defend her on that. You can't go after a woman's looks. I think she's very attractive.
But I didn't say she wasn't attractive. I
hair's
love
pretty.
James Brown. But it's the same hair James Brown, or the godfather of soul, had.
What's your reaction?
Distasteful, definitely. And those comments just really speak to what we have been saying throughout our time together. Our hair is just not deemed as being appropriate. And also, just to take it a step further, it's seen as a laughing matter, something that is not taken seriously, something that can be made fun of, and as something that's very distasteful. And it's so interesting because here you have an accomplished woman, someone who is noted for what she says and for her thoughts, completely overlooked, just like back to Gabby. Everything else that she does, we're going to zero in on that one piece that society says is not great, is not acceptable. So very distasteful.
And also, James Brown didn't wear a wig.
How about
That
that?
was his natural
How
hair.
about that? Yes.
Right.
So little history needed there.
You write that media images have helped many women of color develop the idea that hair is important, but all hair is not equal. What do you mean by that?
There is some hair that gains the praise and plaudits of other people more than others. And so back to, again, people that tend to have longer, silkier hair, nothing wrong with that. But oftentimes that's the hair that said, oh, your hair is really nice, or your hair is beautiful. And so you see that a lot of times in the media. Very rarely do you see someone who's wearing their hair that looks like mine, just to be honest. And so again, that sends a message that this hair needs to be fixed. It needs to be changed. And I think about me years ago when I was aspiring to be an on-air reporter, my look was long, straight hair because that was what I saw in the media. And so that's what I said, this is what, what beauty is. And so there's really is a need to redefine what beautiful is and to encourage people, and for even if you don't see it, to know within yourself. I like how Nicole Ari Parker says it in the book, that we are enough, whether someone says it or not, because even though there can be external dialogue, I think what is most important is the internal dialogue. When that dialogue is on point and you're using Hairlooms, words about hair and beauty that are worth passing along, then you will begin to see a difference, and there will be more of an embrace, to circle back to what you said before, of natural hair, not just because I have it on the outside, but because there's something that's generating on the inside that's more authentic.
But even amongst Black women,
Yeah.
now there seems to be like a hierarchy
Yes,
of
yes.
what's like the different textures.
I know, and the curl
4C or
pattern, yes,
the curl
yeah.
pattern. So what do you think the Black women, because it seems like Black women are now doing to each other what other people did to them?
Sure, and what I would say is that when there are systemic issues, it really takes time for healing. There's an acronym that I created even after I wrote the book with hair. Healing always involves reinvention, H-A-I-R. And so there has to be a reinvention of thoughts, has to be a reinvention of feelings about certain things and what our triggers are. And that's one of the things that I really was purposeful about with Hairlooms. It's not just a book where you just read about different people's stories, but there are exercises at the end where you can begin to work through. And I have a lot of open-ended questions. Ask yourself, how do I really feel about myself? When the lights and camera and action are gone, how do I feel when I take my makeup off, when my hair are two-stranded twists and someone would say I look like buckwheat? How do I feel about myself? And so those are the types of issues that really need to, you need to take a look at those things.
And you feature, you profile 32 Black women in the book.
And men.
And men.
Yes.
And yes, the gentleman from Sesame Street.
Yes, Sesame Street.
And he created that video for I Love My Hair for his daughter.
Yes, he did.
How impactful do you think that video was?
Extremely impactful. And I would say for a couple of reasons. Number one, it showed us on screen. And anytime you see us on screen, that's something that's going to affirm who we are. But then also the fact that it was Sesame Street and it was something that was done for a little girl. And I think in many of us, there's that little girl that wishes someone had catered to us and said, you are beautiful before you get in your 20s, 30s, 40s, or 50s.
And in the 32 people profiled in the book, what's the common thread amongst all those stories?
Two common threads. One I would say is that it's time for African American women, all women in particular, but specifically for us to know that we are enough. And then also the other message would be to embrace who we actually are. Don't spend so much time trying to do something for which we're not genetically disposed or trying to look like someone else, but get to know and to love who we are, because time passes and you wake up and you're 30 and then you wake up and you're 50 and you're like, where has the time gone? I'm chasing after something that really never is going to be mine. But then on the other hand, there's a gold mine of treasure and worth on the inside if we would but take the time to focus on ourselves, stop the criticism, and then to celebrate what we've got and enhance that.
Not to play favoritism for the people in the book, but
Sure.
what was your most impactful story? Like, what did you learn from these people?
Oh, goodness.
I mean, Maya Angelou isn't like,
she's
kind of a big deal.
She's beyond a big deal, just towering grace and elegance and kindness. And what she taught me was that at the end of her life, she loved and fully embraced who she was. It was not even a question. Regardless of what anyone said, she let me know that you can get to that point. Some of the other stories that really were just wonderful for me, there is an Australian writer and visual artist who's in the book, Sue McPherson. Completely awesome story, What
was her story?
Oh, her story. She talked about how she battled with cancer and was a survivor of that. But she lost all of her hair, and it was at that time she said, here I am focusing on hair and I'm clinging to life. And so it began to sort of level set the things that were important to her. So her story, again, was just really great. Then there's another cancer survivor in the story as well, Elaine Jamison, and she's beautifully bald. She said she just got to a point where she just wanted to take it off, and she did not allow her hair to define herself. So to circle back and to answer your question, I really can't, because they were all favorites. There was always something in each and every one of the stories. MC Light, where she channeled or just told the next generation to really embrace who you are and to not focus and get hung up on how you wear your hair, but just make sure it's authentically you. Each and every one really was a gift to me, and I'm so glad I'm able to just share it really with the world.
And what do you hope Black women take away from this book?
A simple message that you're enough. I don't care what anyone has told you. I don't even care what you've told yourself. Take the time to realize the treasure and the value that's on the inside of you. If you get that out of the book, you've got it.
And I just wanted to mention one more person,
Sure.
because we were talking about work. There's Major General Marcia Anderson. Can you tell us her story?
Sure. Major General Marcia Anderson, she has a really riveting story about the challenges of wearing your hair natural in the U.S. Armed Forces. And one of the things that I really like about her, number one, she was not bitter in telling her story. Sometimes that can happen depending on what we sustain, but she was not bitter. And what she said was that when she wore her hair natural and she really rose to the occasion of letting people know the issues that she was dealing with, it was an educational moment.
For her?
And for her, and also for the people around her, that there were other white colleagues that wanted to ask, about hair and what it's like, but they felt afraid to. And so she said, because, that issue came up in terms of wearing natural hair in the armed forces, she was actually able to be an educator. And so I like that, the fact that she could have been very bitter and said, I'm not going to tell you anything, but she took that as an opportunity to educate someone, to understand and to walk in someone else's shoes. And I think that's one of the beauties of Hairlooms, because there's so many people that are covered, there's so much ground that's covered, and I'm getting a lot of feedback. Even people who are not Black are reading the book and they're saying, something resonates with me, because I believe all of us want to be accepted and to know that we're seen as being beautiful from the inside out, not just from the world, but even for ourselves as well.
But not to be defined by...
Precisely.
Thank you so much, Michelle, for
Sure.
being here.
Thanks for having
Great
me.
read.
Help TVO create a better world through the power of learning. Visit TVO.org and make a tax-deductible donation today.